Now I want to show you how you're going to sharpen these tools so that you're going to get the ultimate performance out of all of your carving tools. And I'm going to show you some basic techniques. And what I want to show you with a pocket knife is how to know when your tool needs to be sharpened. So I'm going to make a cut across the grain. The knife is really fighting the fibers, and it's crushing and tearing the fibers of the wood. You're going to hear that sound, that it sounds very gritty and like it's chewing the wood as opposed to slicing it nice and smooth and leaving a nice shiny burnish on it. That's what you're looking for. I have a few coarse stones and some finer stones. I'm going to start with a fairly coarse stone and a can of oil. And the oil lubricates the stone and keeps the particles of steel from clogging the stone. I'm going to hold the knife in my fingers and I'm going to rest my thumb on the top. The closer you are to the cutting edge of the tool, the more control you have. I'm not going to have a lot of control holding my knife way out on the handle, so I choke up on it and leave my thumb on the top. So as I start to drag it forward, I'm keeping it on an angle. Now, I'm going to take a dime and I'll lay a dime on the stone, and that's the angle I'm looking for. Just a very slight tilt to the blade as opposed to a very steep angle. And it's very important to keep a consistent angle on the knife, because the flatter the bevel, the least amount of drag your knife is going to have as it's going through the piece of wood. So a nice flat bevel is what we're looking for. So I'm going to drag the knife cutting edge into the stone. And I'm going to do this several times. And you'll see that as I'm coming to the tip, I'm going to raise the knife up somewhat, because the tip is narrower at the point than it is in the back of the blade. Laying the knife flat to the stone, the tip of the blade is not in contact with the stone, so I have to raise it up in order to get the tip sharpened also. What I'm going to do is just keep dragging the knife into the cutting edge and lifting the tip. But every time I come to the stone, I want to keep the angle consistent. I want to feel for the flatness of the bevel so that it doesn't start to round off. So if I pick the knife up, it seems to settle right on the bevel, and that tells me that I'm at the proper angle. Okay, now we do this several times in one direction. Now what I'm going to do is, because the knife has two bevels, so I want to flip the knife over, but I want to keep my grip the same. I don't want to change. I want to come to a variation of a grip. I want to try to keep my grip the same so I keep the angle consistent. So I'm going to start at the tip now, and as I go away from myself into the other side of the knife, I'm going to flatten it out and hit the bevel again. And you'll start to get into a rhythm. And I flip it over and do the other side. Now, I'm looking for a burr. And the burr is when the two bevels or the two planes on the knife start to meet. And then they start to curl over in a very serrated fashion. If you drag your finger across, you'll feel it catch on your skin on your fingertip. And once the burr starts to appear, I want to make sure that the burr is present from the very tip of the blade all the way to the back of the blade. This tells you that both planes are coming together now, and that they're starting to get short, and then they're starting to curl over the other side of the bevel. If I look and I see the burr go from the tip to about a third and then stop and then pick up again in the back, that tells me that there's a little fat spot in the blade, and that's going to be a drag mark when I go to make a cut across the grain. Now that I've seen the burr come up on the entire cutting edge of the tool, you want to start to refine the edge, and you have to go in sequence from a coarse stone to a medium stone to a fine stone, because what you're doing is cutting big peaks and valleys into the steel. If you went from a coarse stone to a fine stone, all you're going to do is take the tips of these little peaks off, but not remove the valley. So you're going to make a cut, and you're going to feel a lot of dragging. What that is that you have a sharp spot and a hollow spot and a sharp spot and a hollow, almost like a saw blade is what you're looking for, what it would actually look like. So in order to get a really fine edge on your tools, you need to go from a coarse to a medium to a hard stone and then to a leather strop. I'm going to put a small amount of oil on it. And again, keeping the same grip that I had on the other stone, I'm going to pull this towards the cutting edge and lift it up to the tip. After a while, you'll really get to have somewhat of a rhythm that you'll develop. And I spin the blade. I take it from going on the right side of the bevel to the left side by just turning the knife and keeping my grip the same. The more consistent your grip on your tool, the more consistently you're going to get a flat bevel. And you won't be spending hours and hours on your sharpening stones. Each of these sides will be repeated, I don't know, 10, 12 times on each side. There isn't a real magic formula for this. You just start to develop a feel. Now I'm switching over to the hard white Arkansas. Again, this is going to refine the edge even more. You can hear that it's not cutting as loudly. Okay, this is really starting to put a fine edge on this now. Now the burr is still on the blade. That little serrated edge is still on here. It's becoming finer and finer. Now this is the last stone. This almost feels like it's doing absolutely nothing, but it really is. It's just really refining those scratches and really giving a fine, fine edge to the knife. Now you can't really just go from this hard black Arkansas and start making a cut because the burr is still there, and that burr is going to break off and it's going to take a little bit of the blade with it. So we're going to go to the next step, which is a leather strop with a buffing compound. And we're really going to start to polish the edge and remove the burr on the leather strop. Okay, the knife has been stropped. The burr is gone. I don't feel anything catching my fingertips. So I'm going to take it for a little test ride. So let me show you a little swipe going down the end grain with this. So when you see that nice, beautiful tool edge, that's as good as it gets. You can't get a better edge than that.